Thank you all for coming back. It's been an amazing few days. I'm so delighted to be part of this festival, and thank you, Neil, for that very kind introduction. It's been a privilege to be with Bloodaxe for what seems a lifetime, practically. So I'm going to start with an old poem, actually just called Letters from Yorkshire, and it's a poem I wrote when I moved from the north to London and was taken aback, really, by my new life there, and friends wrote to me, and that kept me sane, I think. So it came back into its own, really, during lockdown, when we were all very far apart and thinking of community and trying to keep in touch and find different ways of keeping in touch with each other. Letters from Yorkshire. In February, digging his garden, planting potatoes, he saw the first lapwings return and came indoors to write to me, his knuckles singing as they reddened in the warmth. It's not romance, simply how things are, you out there in the cold, seeing the seasons turning, me with my heart full of headlines, feeding words onto a blank screen. Is your life more real because you dig and sow? You wouldn't say so, breaking ice on a water butt, clearing a path through snow. Still, it's you who sends me word of that other world, pouring air and light into an envelope, so that at night, watching the same news in different houses, our souls tap out messages across the icy miles. That time, when I first arrived in London, was during Thatcher's time, and I was looking at this poem the other day and thinking, actually, nothing has changed at all. Out. It's a medieval life in this country's great capital. Bloodied glass and bone and bile, wounds nursed beneath the stars. We're out all night, every night, under that distant glitter, bandaged up with promise and that old anaesthetic, hope. The streets yield up their dead alive, loused up, leaky, dancing till dawn in ball gowns or rags. Is it greed, honed to a mean, sharp-tongued conclusion, this chorus of more, 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 and a choreographed turning of backs? Or just another kind of quick step through centuries of silence, with all the ancient arms presented, fists, iron, stone. And then we sort of move on to maybe trying to find a way forward in our many different campaigns. And we have talks about talks. There's memory, there's truth, and there's the way the machine works. A splice, a little oil, a steady hand with the two wires. I could find a story in it for you, though it would beg a belief, and you'd hate the ending or feel you'd heard it before, it being not new but one of the 7 tales that roam the world in search of a teller. There's future, there's past, and there's politics. A speech, a little gossip, a shaky hand obeying a shaking head. I could find meaning in it for you, though it might not ring true, and you'd hate the translation or feel that you'd do better yourself with a bulky dictionary and body language. There's talk, there's silence, and there's the way you sit now, a table, a little fidgeting, the steady ticking of an old, sad clock. I could find history in it for you, though it might not be news, and you'd hate the film version or feel you'd lived it already, if only you could remember when and where and why. Thinking about not talking, or not acting, rather, only talking. This is a short poem which is called Still Life with Sea Pinks and High Tide, and the other name for sea pinks, well, one of the many, is thrift, as I'm sure you know. So I was thinking about that and the fact that we still are in search of some sort of action, I think. Still life with sea pinks and high tide. Thrift, grows tenacious at the tide's reach. What is that reach when the water is rising, rising? Our melting, shifting, liquid world won't wait for manifesto or mandate, each warning a reckoning. Ice in our gin or vodka chirrups and squeaks, dissolving in the hot, still air of talking, talking, talking. And staying with water, we've had quite a lot of poems about water in the last few days. A beautiful poem from Chris earlier, and I'm going to read an extract from a long poem, not too long, don't worry. It's called The Source, and it's about that. It's about water being underneath and over everything, and it incorporates some little bits and pieces from folk songs. So you might hear one kind of running past. And also a little bit of Auden and a little bit from the Bible in the section that I'm going to read. The Source. It is the breaking of the waters that begins it all. On the Somerset levels in early spring, you might just imagine that basket of canes, the one perhaps you learned of in school, an intricacy of withies and moss. Sphagnum and cotton grass under the head of the baby, entrusted to blue sky and grace, whose crib, tucked in between bulrush and Bible, catches on brambles and borders of sedge, and could be any family secret, cast out to float on bright green duckweed, taking its chance under willow and sunshine. For one is one and all alone, and evermore shall be so. In rush-lit cottages, they plaited soft mats for the woman in spate, brought to the reeds, unstoppable as a late spring tide. Loose strife as blanket, bunting as lullaby. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. It is the breaking of the waters that begins it all. And here the waters were broken by something like land, the peaty, Dutch-worked meadows, whose soft earth could be mist, a cow's breath on a frost-licked morning. Meadows that rise in dawn light in an orderly gradation of vapours, luminous, shining strange, pearly. Reens striping the released fields, a slither of eels in their amber shallows, like tiny guy ropes, tethering this water world that would be one with the shoals of a Somerset sky. What does it mean when a well runs dry? We've taken too much, pumped up, poured out, more than we need. And now, in Venice, Bangkok, London, we are the slippery, subsiding places of the earth, and must learn to manage what has been given. This plundering, mazy search for water, this greedy, chaotic irrigation drove springs back under, down deep into chalk. But it is the breaking of the waters that begins it all. The soil, gravel, sand, the marl, loam and clay, over which the hand with the hazel wand pauses, hoping to find that path of connection, the way a trickle finds old rock, clears an avenue through limestone, forces every fracture and fissure, makes any void a conduit for water, spinning, to the speleologist's joy, a cobweb of caves, and at its centre the suddenness of a buried river. Dissolving as it does in water, is it limestone that yields the one landscape that we, the inconstant ones, are consistently homesick for, or is it what the Welsh know best, this something more than sickness, which I catch from time to time, in the way sea glimmers through trees on a coastal road, or a dew pond rises quietly on the common after rain, or the river, a sudden stripe of light, is glimpsed down an alleyway, as if the heart in a flash recalls the way we used to behave, a mood we forgot we knew, the liquid landscape of hope. So I'm going to read some family poems now, and beginning with because a lot of the poems in the new book sort of revolve around that, a little bit, as Neil was saying, to do with memory, or to do with imagined stories of family as well, because a lot of the family I don't know very much about, family in my background. So the first poem is called Fam, Fam as in family and Fam as in famine. Fam. Light on the horizon as you stand on the shore. It doesn't need hunger to scatter a nation, but the insidious drip of rain, rot, misfortune. Not the palm held out, just the fist. My grandfather was one of about 8 children, and 7 of them were boys, and most of them ended up joining the army. And my grandfather was Irish, so joining the British Army was not a great thing to be doing, and something that most people did only out of dire necessity. So this poem is called Quiver, and it's about his time during the First World War. And I think people who move countries have to work so hard and do not always see, do they, the fruits of their labour. I never met my grandfather. Quiver. An Irishman in the British Army in exchange for boots and warmth. Or an Irish boy, maybe, 5'5", lying about his age, hungry. An Irish boy. Ypres, Somme, Abancourt. An Irishman in the British Army of good character is disciplined for drink when his father dies in the workhouse. Of good character is confined to barracks when casement is hanged. An Irishman in the British Army is released, and in the steamy soup kitchen the room quivers when a girl lifts her head to look back at him swimmily. She'll do fine. He pictures her, steady at a stove somewhere. They'll plant a row of scallions, lilies maybe, watch the waves from a shore he can't yet name. Through steam he pictures her, steady somewhere, a quiver. An Irishman in the British Army, never to be welcomed home, sees Ireland just once more, swimmily. Could not picture me, a little way down the line somewhere, looking back at him, steadily, released. Fine wind, clear morning. On such a morning, clear as a glass of fresh water, I see my mother in her garden, so many years away, bend to take a sprig of mint. At her touch, between thumb and finger, the scent whirls, spirals, turns on a westward breeze to reach me here. Perennial, restorative, familiar. My mother hands to me a sprig of mint. Anne Bronte was only 29 when she died. It's often such a shock to look at writers you love and see what very short lives they had and how much they managed to cram in. She was only 29. She was visiting Scarborough in the hope of recuperating, but she's buried in Scarborough. And her last words to her sister Charlotte were, "Take courage." The unforgotten. At Anne Bronte's grave, in the salt air she loved, where the words were almost lost from the stone dissolving, "You first kissed me." And once we took my parents to see the rain, the moorland, the tiny writing we struggled to read, stepping out dazed into that garden of tombs, gleaming in the damp light. And sometimes I swipe at crumbs or dry plates with my souvenir linen image of 3 melded heads, fading, indistinct. But today I open a beaten copy of the Novels of the Bronte Sisters, Pilot Edition, 1947, the only thing left of my grandmother's time on earth, to read in her bold, emphatic hand. Nearer than the living are the unforgotten dead. Their presence is ever with you, and they walk always at your side. Yes, I wanted to read you a poem about, you won't be able to see this I don't think, but there's 2 hearts on the front of this book. And they're two enormous hearts. It's a sculpture which is in a sculpture park near Boston, to Cordova. They're enormous, so they'd be the size of this whole stage, two great big hearts. They're made by Dine, who's a painter and sculptor, and a man who grew up in a hardware store and has a great love of kitchenalia and all kinds of tools and small machinery. And those hearts are embedded with all kinds of things from his house and his garage and his workshop. And there's something very moving about it. And when I found those hearts, simply by sort of turning around a corner, suddenly there they were on the hill, there was a woman cleaning them, cleaning Jim Dine's heart. In the afternoon sunlight at the Cordova Sculpture Park, she is on the top rung of a pair of steps, cleaning a big, dark heart. And it has everything in it, this heart, twice. Even the coffee pot I brought back in hand luggage that time, when such a thing seemed exotic, exciting, more or less unknown. The coffee pot that blew up in the end, leaving its mark on the ceiling of Oakmead Road, that one. Here it is, unthought of, unremembered, treacly, right here in Jim Dine's big dark heart, which needs cleaning now, front and back, twice, along with all its other secrets, writ large, packed tight, here in sunlight, his histories, which are our histories, some of them at least, hands moving in darkness, worn-out shoes, rope, the hammers and saws of a life together, coffee, caught forever here in a heartbeat and wiped clean now, restored in afternoon sunlight, the darkness shining, made good. And I'll just finish with a small poem which is right at the end of 555, which is the new book. And it's called A Bunch of Consolation, and it's a line from a poem by Adrian Mitchell called Beatty is Three, a very short poem about the comfort of holding a child's hand. And I think there is great comfort for the child in having their hand held, but the comfort is so often the other way around. A bunch of consolation. You think they'll always be there, the ones who always have been. They showed you the way, not their way, but how to find your own and what to say, sweeping the path of leaves or snow. But then they leave, they go, before you were ready. How could you ever be ready? To wonder, wondering, what have you learned exactly? To love, to speak up, to hold steady. Hold steady. Thank you very much.